Hey folks, it's time for another Tech Chat Tuesday with Ken Rimple from Chariot Solutions. Glad to be here today on this wonderful Tuesday. And where I am, it's sunny and the clouds are out. Where you are might not be the same, and I apologize for that because I can't change the weather. But appreciate you showing up. We are going to talk about a number of things today. We'll start off with some developer news, and then from there, we're going to cover topics around human stories in engineering. So things like what happens when things go sideways, how do people deal with it? And so we have a whole section on that. You can leave us feedback at TechCast on Twitter. And if you're watching this, you can certainly send us chat messages. I should be able to get this stuff and look at the chat. And also I have Becca Refford, our esteemed producer, is online with us, and she can jump in and let me know if something is going wrong or if we have someone who with a good comment would like to speak. Please leave your comments on the site in the comments box. And if there's anything in real time, we can get back to you. So a couple things here. Big news in developer world. To me, the biggest one, and I'm a JavaScript front-end engineer, is one of my jobs. I work on Angular and React, and I experiment here and there with Vue. But for a long time now, React has been rendering things in sequence without concurrent rendering processes and concurrent processing, basically single threads, all that work. And so now there is a preview of the concurrent mode of React available on the experimental release channel. Let me bring up a blog entry here. So first of all, in the actual website itself, let me just kill all this other stuff. In the website itself, they have introducing concurrent mode, concurrent UI patterns, and this is an experimental thing. It is now on the experimental release chain, so there's a blog article for this. If I can find it here. Of course, now that I need it, I can't find it.
Hey, Ken, I can't see your screen either if you're trying to...
Oh, hey. It already is going sideways. There we go. Here it comes. Folks, I know what I'm doing.
Perfect.
Really. Thank you, Becca. Yeah, so React concurrent mode. This is a pretty cool thing. So on the React website, there's a entry for concurrent UI patterns in the concurrent mode here, and it has been released. So I'll link to a blog entry. Oh, here it is. Actually, I can get this up here for you. There's a blog entry from Kent C. Dodds. He used to be an Angular developer, and he committed to a forms library, and then he switched over to React a couple of years back and has not looked back since. So he has how to enable React concurrent mode as a quick blog entry. He has a nice video on egghead.io, which, by the way, I love for quick training videos, like 7-8 minute training videos. Perfect. And Kent's excellent. We've had him at Chariot for ETE a couple of times for emerging technologies for the enterprise. It's experimental, but he walks through how to get everything set up. And the main thing here is they now have this concept of a suspense DOM element. And so the suspense element gives you the ability to show things only when something is actually finished, when the concurrent processes are finished, to be able to show it, and also gives you kind of a fallback. There's ways of showing statuses. So if you go to the, so let me throw this first of all. This is in, I'll put it in the chat. Throw this in here. Oh, I can't. Wait a minute. I can do this. Let's see here. I'll just put it in the chat in YouTube. That way you guys can get it. Uh-oh. There we go. And let's see. Start here. There we go. So in the chat here, I've just pasted in the Kent C. Dodds article. And so this article, again, is kind of a tutorial on how to enable React concurrent mode. It's not in production yet, as I said, but it's something you should start looking at if you're a React developer to see what you can do. And I believe this is Danny's post to me today to let me know at Chariot. So thanks to him. Let me just paste something here. This is the actual page concurrent UI patterns on the React site. So, you can see the suspense for data fetching feature. This is, again, where you can have a suspense tag wrapping content that gets lazily loaded. And so only when this particular thing happens, there's a react.lazy that runs asynchronously. It imports this component lazily, loads it up, and when it says ready to go, the suspense will then show that profile page. But until it does, it shows a spinner component. That's a pretty easy way of thinking about it. So this is something you would have to program yourself by default, build your own spinner, throw things on it, and that could be tedious. So this is a way of avoiding that and getting it to work a little more declaratively. There's also a bunch of things like having transitions, having different steps, where you basically have the default moves onto a skeleton of the content, and when it's completed, it does the rest of it. And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of really interesting things here. I've spent zero time on it. I've just seen the announcement. So that's something really interesting, but check it out if you're a React developer. So that's the first dev news article, is concurrent mode in React. But not to be outdone, we also have found out that Angular 10 came out. Wasn't Angular 9 out just about a month ago? No, it was 4 months ago, but still, bottom line, it's out. So now, Stephen Fluen from the Angular team has released the version 10 release notes for version 10 of Angular. A couple of interesting things about that. They now have a new date picker. So one quick note, they do release the Angular and Angular Material APIs as part of the same major release. So there's an Angular Material 10 as well as an Angular 10. And so one of the things they've released, along with that in the CLI, is a new date picker, which I have an example of here. It's a date range picker. So let me bring the, we talked last week about Stack Blitz. All the documentation in Angular generally has samples that they run, and they use Stack Blitz for a lot of this stuff. So you can right away start playing around with this date picker UI, and there it is. So it's called mat date range input, and so you can take a look at that sample code if you want to. So first things first, let's paste in the version release in the YouTube page. Do that for you. And then here is the date picker sample that you can play around with as well. So interesting stuff. Now, in addition to that, there's more. So a couple other things that they've announced. There's now a warning about using CommonJS libraries. Now, what CommonJS is it's an older packing format for shared libraries in JavaScript. And part of the problem with the CommonJS libraries is that they can't be tree shaken as well as the regular, I guess the required JS or whatever the current packaging model is. But the bottom line is that if you use a library that doesn't use tree shaking features, it's going to bloat your code. It's going to take longer for your app to start. It's going to include all of the code of that JavaScript library instead of just the code of the functions you need. A great example of that would be if you were using something like Moment.js. At the time I used Moment.js about 3 years ago on a project, maybe 4 now, Moment.js, and it might still be the case, but I'm not sure. I don't want to impugn it here. But Moment.js was something written with CommonJS as the target library. And so you would get every single language of the date language strings for all the locales imported into your JavaScript of the target when you run your page. So it's big. And you don't need that. You want to have a small, tight, quick to start, compact JavaScript library, because the smaller the file is, the quicker it parses, the quicker it runs. So what they've done is they put a warning in during a build saying, hey, you're using CommonJS. And so now you should be able to get a warning back from that says, that, you could consider an alternative option here. And so, you could either like whitelist one or put it in there and make it allowed, or you can go and find a better alternative. The other thing is that it does is that it allows now a feature called strict mode. Now, of course, you've always had strict mode in TypeScript. You can, tell TypeScript compiler to be very strict and always allow types only and not any's and, default type checking and things like that. But you can actually make the entire project as strict as possible when you create a new project. And so there's this strict setting that creates a TypeScript strict mode by default. It makes sure your templates are strict, so it does type checking on those, so you don't get an accidental variable type conversion that's wrong. It'll also check to see how much space your bundles are taking up when you're building your production bundles, and it has done that in the past, but it's got a pretty large maximum size that it starts warning you at. I think it's a meg or two. But now they've reduced that way down by about 75%. So they want you to think lean for these smaller size applications. They also prevent any keywords from being used in a lot of places. And there's one notice here, which I need to research, is that they configure the app to be side effect free. And I don't know exactly what that means in an Angular app. So it'll be interesting to see what that is. Let me just turn off my notifications because they are on. That's just what I need to see all my notifications. Oh, there we go. Please go away. Thank you. All right. So, Becca, we'll have to edit that out later. I'm sure great stuff was on there. But anyway, so yeah, it's ng new -- strict. Great feature. Really, really handy. The other thing that they've done is they've upgraded to TypeScript 3.9 to TS library of 2 and TS lint of version 6. And start shuttering now, Angular developers. There's a new file. They've changed files every once in a while. They've created now a tsconfig.base.json file. So it's another tsconfig file. And I guess this helps with things like IDEs and build tooling, resolving your types and package configurations, as they say. So this must be something that'll help you out in your IDE. The other thing they've done is they've went from the defaults for browsers they support out of the box from this list down to a more modern list. They've also made it so that they've disabled ES5 builds by default for new projects, because frankly, now all browsers that you're using, for the most part, are past the ES5 limitations. That's basically 5 years ago now. So most browsers on most phones, tablets, and desktops are running ECMAScript 2015 or higher. So you don't need to down build to that level. If you need to modify it, you can just go ahead and add the browsers you need to support in your browser's list RC file, and you can enable ES5 builds and such through that. And they've been working on bugs. And so there's other stuff in here as well. To upgrade to it, there's a simple process. It's ng update at Angular/CLI and at Angular/core, and that will go through and try to upgrade the app for you. Back up beforehand, commit all your code beforehand, do this in an experimental branch. But that's another good piece of news, is Angular 10 is released. Okay. And actually, that was released the day I did the last week's podcast, so I forgot about that. Okay, so a couple other good announcements. We now have all of Philly Emerging Tech 2020 online. So let me go to show you where that is, chariotSolutions.com. We will have a short link to that, /ETE-2020-videos, but I don't know if that's up yet. So if you go into your screencast under resources, and you just pick any of the ETE 2020 resources, here's Theo Schlossnagel's Latency SLOs Done Right. If you click any of those, you click ETE 2020, there are all of the talks. So there's a whole bunch of these. They're free to you to use. And Becca, do you want to say something about like your process there?
Yeah, so if you hit any of these videos too, there's a link to YouTube playlists. They're all pretty thoroughly tagged on YouTube as well. So if you search Philly ETE 2020, all of these should come right up for you, so you can just kind of binge watch them all in one shot. Yeah, there you go.
And if you have a tablet and you've got Google, what is it? YouTube Plus, I think it is. It's the one you can buy that you can basically save things. You can save these videos to your tablet, for example, and use them on a road trip. So if you really want to, watch lots of tech while you're on the beach, don't do that. Or just somewhere else. Let's just say you can go through and binge this whole thing. Thanks, Becca. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Good job on that too, because that was a lot of work coordinating those things. So we
Oh
really
yeah, Richard Feldman's was the big one this year. We've already got a good bit of views on that, and from last year, ETE 2019, just staying on top of some of the stats there. Carol Nichols' talk on Rust, we still get comments on every single day. People sounding off there. So, Philly ETE 2020 is live and available, but if you want to watch previous years' ETEs too, they're in the Chariot Solutions playlist. Just follow us there.
fantastic. And yeah, I guess you could just go to the Chariot Solutions subscriptions here if you want to start there.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the playlists, and there they are. Also, another thing that's up, we've been updating our 15 minutes with videos. So Tracy Wilson Rossman, don't play it, has been putting some up here. I'm not sure the newest one. Liz Brown, this is it right here. The newest one is Liz Brown on accessibility in the life sciences startup space with Tracy. So, it's Tracy Wilson Rossman and a few of our people doing 15-minute interviews with different people in the kind of the confluence of business and tech together, how they solve tech problems in the scope of business and what kind of business challenges they're facing. So it's a really good series as well. So that's another.
Ken, actually, looks like we just got a comment just to back up a little bit to ES6. So Kirtan Prajapati asked, how powerful is ES6?
Oh, good question. So ES6 is basically, the other term for it is, it was ES Next, then it was ES6, then it was ES 2015. So in 2015, the committee from the JavaScript, committee where is it hosted? I forget anymore. But there's a TC39 committee. It's all the open source developers who contribute to the specification. ES5 was created around 2009. So it's 11 years old now. And it was like the baseline of JavaScript that everyone used for single page app development for a long time. What ES 2015 gives you, and all the browser developers rallied around this, is things like built-in promises, and classes, and a bunch of other features that are really valuable. Oh, instead of var, you have let and const now for things like scoped variables inside of loops and inside of if statements and things like that. So then there are a lot of other things as well. So if you're not developing for ES 2015 or higher, so it's called ES6 in some of the comments here, but really ES 2015 or higher, every year there have been updates to the browser specifications. So ES 2015 is 5 years ago. We're already up on like 2018, 2019, 2020 specs. And the browser community has been updating their browsers every so often with more up-to-date specs. So it's not like you're coding to like a very old standard anymore. Most phones are updated on a regular basis. So 2015 is really the baseline. ES6/ES 2015 is really the baseline you should be using, in my opinion. I don't know if that really helps, but it's very powerful would be the quick answer to that. All right, thank you for that question too. Okay, so let's see here. We have another entry here I want to bring up. So let me just post this up here real quick. Is the ETE category, just so we have it in the chat. Dead air. Hi, Becca. The dead air is me trying to find the window.
Oh, Tracy says hey too. Hey, Tracy.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, there we go. There. So that's the screencasts, and here's the Liz Brown podcast. So you have that too. Yay! All right, so we're moving on now. So here's an entry for Keith Smith. Keith, I know Keith Smith. Hi, Keith Smith. Keith Gregory. Keith Gregory has a blog entry that was on July 1st. I'm not sure if we mentioned it before, but I do like to mention stuff that we do on AWS. And Keith is one of the people that blogs a lot about AWS for Chariot. He's our AWS practice lead. So he has an article up here about dealing with secrets and parameters in a cloud environment with Amazon. And so, he goes through the difference between these two places that you can store things. Parameter store is one place you can do settings, and secrets manager is another. And so he shows what each is good at and not so good at. He talks about how you have to set up permissions to get to things. If you're using secrets, how to rotate them. And he shows you how to create things in CloudFormation. So if you're an AWS developer and you're kind of getting your feet wet with developing and provisioning stacks, he is a good person to follow on Chariot's site. So you can either click on Keith Gregory and go to all his tons of blog articles that are really, really useful. Or you can click on the AWS one, and that's anything we've written on AWS, and there's a lot of that as well.
Keith just did a really good webinar. It was AWS Things I Learned the Hard Way, and it was him, Bill Thompson from Lafayette College, and Eric Schmidt from Moban, and they were all talking about just like the pitfalls that they've run into developing. It was actually a pretty good conversation, and that's under screencasts on the Chariot site too.
Yeah, let me go ahead and grab this real quick. I'm going to give this to him, the virtual him, which is me. Thank you. Thank you, me. I got to work on my banter here. There's the parameter store article. And so we're going to go to...
Where are you dropping these links? Because I can't see them in the comments.
Oh, you know, it's funny. I'm putting them in the chat window in YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if they end up in the chat window on YouTube. And funny enough, I don't see anything in private chat either. So, oh, it's in comments. Help me, somebody help me.
I'm nervous to open YouTube and get audio feedback.
Yeah, just quickly mute it. You'll be good. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying here. I'm trying, folks. Okay, so where I'm going next is I'm going to go back to that. We're going to go to our resources. We're going to go to screencasts. And this, yes, this is an excellent one. Sorry, plain old, because ETE is in front of it. Things I've learned. What was the title of that again?
The Things I Learned the Hard Way.
I'm going to search for the hard way. Hey, there it is.
Hey.
Always frightening to type certain search terms in. But yes, so there we go. And so this is a really, really good one. I was, both of us were monitoring that podcast as it went along. Lots of good information. So again, I'm putting this on the YouTube stream. I guess we can go back and put this in the chat too, I suppose. But that's where that's going to be. So the things I've learned the hard way. And there's a lot of really good stories in here. So excellent stuff. Okay, so that leads us to our next topic, which is human stories in engineering. Now, this is every week I try to pick a topic that I can rant about or talk about. And so this is my best effort with a week of busy project work, but I think it's going to be useful for you. And so a couple things. So you're a developer, you're a software engineer, you're working on, infrastructure, what have you, and you don't have a lot of contact with people who have done things before. When you first get started, it's hard to know what you don't know. And so there's obvious ways to find out how things work. You can certainly read books, you can go to websites, you can read message forums, and certainly people go to Stack Overflow and Google, and that's what everyone ends up doing for a targeted specific thing. But as a developer and as an engineer, it's good to kind of like sharpen your sword a little bit now and then and get better at, identifying things by finding out what other people have done. And so a couple things you can do. Here's a good example of the message boards angle. When I was first developing the Angular training back in, so this was after I did Angular JS, it was Angular, and that was back in, I'm going to say 2014. But when I was doing that, I was really struggling with some concepts with reactive JavaScript RxJS. And so there is a website that people used. Let's see, what is it now? I won't remember. Angular forums. Now I won't be able to find it. Anyway, that's embarrassing. I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden. But so I went to, anyway, I'll post a link to the forum. Doesn't matter which one it is. But the forum I went to was one for talking about various topics. And one of them was the Angular and RxJS topics. So I went there, and there was a guy named Rob Wormold. And Rob Wormold is a developer on Google's team for Angular who came in through developing and working on RxJS. And what I thought was really useful about that forum, and it will come to me in a minute, is that, this guy is just hanging out there. He's one of the committers, but he's hanging out on the forum, and he's talking about things that people want to learn how to do. Fantastic. So one thing you could do is try to seek out the people who are the committers who really want to share. And Rob was an excellent person for that. He did lots of talks for the NG-Conf and for other conferences. He has a really good thing called Everything is a Stream. And so this is how I found him. Right, so here he is. This particular talk that's on DevChat TV, and I won't play it right now, but an excellent one. And somewhere in here, he's got this cute little dog. You'll know it's the right one. Oh, he got rid of the dog. It was a dog in lotus position. I thought it was the cutest thing in the world. But it's called Everything is a Stream. And there's a slide version of this. And just an excellent way of thinking about what RxJS is. Here are the slides for it. I'm pretty sure this is it. And of course, because I want to come up, there it is. Good doggy. So this thing is still great to give them an idea of how this stuff works. I wouldn't have found much else about him unless I ended up on those message forums and I ran into him and I checked out what he was doing. I think he posted a link to this there, which then led us to start pursuing him for a talk at ETE. I forget if we actually got him, but the bottom line is that you meet somebody, you make a connection, you learn. You can certainly go to meetups. It's really good when you're either in a forum or a meetup. You can ask open-ended questions. So for example, like how did you get involved in this technology, or what were you doing before you worked in, let's say, AWS? Did you ever do server-side stuff in VPSs and things like that? And what was your transition like? How hard was it for you to switch? What were the important things that you learned that helped you get a leg up to figure things out? People love talking about themselves. People love to share their knowledge, and many people don't get a chance to do that. So while someone might go to a meetup hoping to help somebody out, unless someone asks for some basic information from them, they don't know that you need it. So it's good to find the people that are the experts that want to talk and just strike up a conversation. So certainly if you're able to do that, it's harder now with COVID-19 and everyone being on Zoom. I get that. So the message forums and things like that. By the way, I do remember the name of the thing. This is how my mind works. It takes forever. Gitter.im. And so like gitter.im, let me just sign in real quick while we're talking about this. Please sign in. There we go. And so Angular, and that's where he is. And the interesting thing about these sites is it's kind of like an IRC or flowing chat. You can search these things. You can, put your questions in here. So if you have some sort of chatting mechanism like Gitter, like some of the other ones that are out there, I don't want to be bothered by this thing over and over again. There are a lot of these interactive chat places that can kind of substitute a little bit for the in-person experience for now. It'll all go back at some point, but I know that's rough. So in light of that, you might be surprised to know that people who deal with serious failures on the internet and fix them write about this stuff. They write about this stuff and they share their war stories. They're called Post-Mortems. And in fact, there are engineers out there, site reliability engineers. And that's kind of like the term they're calling themselves. And the community is starting to adopt. They're engineers that try to keep the lights on, make sure everything is running fast and fluid and people are notified when issues come up and so on. So they're SREs, or site reliability engineers. Quick note and quick plug for one of Chariot's talks at Philly ETE. I was talking to Becca about this, and she said, "Oh, you know what, Ken? Jamie Allen, who worked at Chariot for 5 or 6 years, and we've known for years, and has been a speaker and a committee member, had done a talk literally called 'What is Site Reliability Engineering?' So if you're curious, he works for another company now, but he's working with EPAM Systems, and he has a whole topic here on production engineering and on site reliability engineering. So with that in mind, let's talk a bit about war stories. One of the things you can ask when you're in a meetup is, hey, tell me some horror stories that happened to you. Like, what happened when this site went down? Or, Have you configured Docker and had Docker go sideways because maybe you didn't scale it properly? Another quick note, that topic we were talking about, the things I learned the hard way, there's a really good piece of that particular video where Keith and his friends on that topic get into a discussion about what is the right metric to use for scaling to getting another server spun up. And you'd think it's CPU, but that's not necessarily it. So, they talk about things like what's the queue depth of what things, how many things are in the request queue to get done and things like that. So, you only find this stuff out by talking to people who have done it. So it's always good to go to conferences. Right now we can't go to conferences, but it's good to also watch videos. It's also good to look at some of these postmortems and blog entries that list these postmortems. So I'll start you off with this entry, and we'll put this in the notes here in YouTube. And then let's take a look at some other links that might be helpful here. So first of all, if you're curious, Google has a whole website on site reliability engineering. And so chapter 15 of that is post-mortem culture, learning from failure. And so they talk about in this one, finding out like what happened for a given failure, right? So some things that might trigger a post-mortem: data loss. If you have customers and you lose data, you had better write up a post-mortem about what happened, how it happened, how you're going to address it in the future, and what you're trying to do to address that problem. Things like resolution times above a threshold for certain things. If you've got a service level agreement and you're past it because of overload, you should talk about what you're doing to address it and what you can do. The thing to remember is that it's very important that things be blameless, right? The whole point is that you must identify the contributing causes, but don't indict any individual or team. You're really just trying to get at the cause to try to help other people in the future to figure out what you can do better. So this is something as part of a book called Site Reliability Engineering. So I'm going to throw this up here.
Actually, Ken, when you said you were talking about this today, do you remember when Capital One had the big data breach, like last summer, I think it was?
Yes.
So I had a credit card with them at the time, and I took a screenshot of the notification that they gave users. I had to laugh at it. It said, no bank account numbers or social security numbers were compromised other than about 140,000 social security numbers. Why even say it? Why phrase it like that?
You could start with, we found out that 140,000. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, that is the kind of thing where, now, of course, you've got a credit card. I mean, the first thing you're going to say is, I want to blame someone because this is my money.
Right.
I get it. I get that too. But also just getting at the problem, you're right. Don't bother the pointing fingers part, but also get to write what the issue is.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Let's see here. I've got a couple links. So this document on post-mortem cultural learning from failure is one chapter that's interesting to look at. I also have the overall book here. Let's see if this is the right link. Yeah, this is the entire link to what is site reliability engineering. So you've got that to look at as well, and get a feel for that stuff. And they talk about like all their foundational principles and things like that at Google for doing this. And also I have some interesting little tidbits here. So Cloudflare's blog, I was asking Keith Gregory about this a couple days ago, and I'm like, hey, where would you go for some good postmortems? And he said, well, I don't know specifically about deep postmortems all the time, but Cloudflare has excellent ones when they do them. So for example, here's an example. On June 20th, Cloudflare automatically mitigated a highly volumetric distributed denial of service attack that peaked above 754 million packets per second. That sounds large. An organized 4-day campaign from June 18th to June 21st. If you click on that, they really get into it, right? They start talking about like, here's what all this is the actual pattern of the attack. They have automated systems that were able to mitigate the attack. And so here's what they did. And it's kind of a tutorial. So this is really more of a tutorial than a postmortem. But I do have postmortems because I found an interesting GitHub project that collects them. So let me just throw this to give you an idea of just reporting against an attack, which is not really a post-mortem, but it's a report against an attack that happened. But let's take a look at a nice collection of things that went wrong. In fact, here's the Cloudflare one. So this is a list of post-mortems that this person is collecting. And so, for example, Cloudflare, a bad config router rule caused all the edge routers to crash, taking down all of Cloudflare. Cloudflare is, I believe, a content delivery network. So they distribute content across a bunch of edge servers in different geographical locations. So if we click back on Cloudflare again, look at that. It was the same day, which is probably good if you are still awake. I don't know how late they worked on that, but the bottom line is someone wrote down and did a postmortem of what happened during that nice dip right there from 10 to 12, looks like a.m. So they, go into what the problem was. There was a bad rule that they had. They actually had someone who captured the sessions being withdrawn as things crashed. So things start going away. I guess I'm going to make this faster. That looks bad. Means they can't get anywhere. Nothing can propagate. So, and then they talked about how they dealt with the incident, the response to it, and so on. Okay, so that's an example, and there's a whole category of postmortems for Cloudflare, so you can go crazy there and look at all those. So anyway, so this site is Dan Liu postmortems on GitHub. Pop that in there. You can see a bunch of Google ones, Microsoft, Stack Overflow. Interesting. Travis CI, continuous integration tool, you name it. Then there's hardware power failures. Amazon had one. An unknown event caused a transformer to fail. One of the PLCs, which are programmable logic controllers, those are the things that push switches for you. They're very old concept-wise. They've been around in factories forever. But they have an automated factory and automated floors for these machine rooms. So it looks like there was one that checks that the generator power is in phase, and it didn't know, so it didn't work properly. So we click on that one. There's their example. Lots of detail, lots of information. So if you're working in a particular area, if you're working on AWS, you're working on Microsoft, you're working on doing CI stuff, and you're thinking like, how do I handle problems? You might tool around in places like this. Get a feel for what could go wrong and what people do to fix them. And if you do, as a project team, run into a situation that you think can help other engineers or help your customer understand what happens, coming up with the concept of doing a blameless postmortem is not a bad idea. It'll keep you honest. It'll keep you feeling in communication and connection with your customers and with your other developers. And it will, make you try to understand the problem better so it doesn't happen again next time. So, that's not a bad thing either. Okay, so that's our show. Hopefully this has been informative for you today. If you need to get a hold of me, you can hit me up at TechCast. That's my Twitter handle. You can leave us feedback right here in the YouTube video. If you go to chariotSolutions.com and you go to the resources screencast tab, you can take a look at all the videos that we do, including ETE 2020, 2019, 2017, 2016, 2015, all the way back. Lots and lots of content there, and also on our YouTube channel and our podcasts on, you can find them on, iTunes or Play Store or places like that. Just search for Chariot Solutions TechCast. And that's it. So for Becca Refford and for myself, I wish you a happy Tuesday.
Bye, guys.
How do I turn this off? Let me do that. Bye, everybody.